Hi, students. My name is Mitchell. I'm a fashion tutor, and in this video, you will learn how to sew this dress with pointed collar. This is the shoulder line, the armhole line, bust line, under bust, waistline, and the hip line. The neck width is 3 inches, and the depth is 3 inches. The shoulder is 7 inches plus half inch joining allowance. Mark the 7.5 inches on the armhole line. On the waistline, mark the bust span, which is the nape to nape divided by 2. Mine is 4 inches, but I marked 4.5 inches. The half inch will serve as sewing allowance. On this hip line, you will measure 2 inches upwards. That's where the dart line will stop. That line will stop 2 inches above the hip line. On the waistline, mark half inch on both sides. You can use 1 inch. Mark the same on the under bust. The dart line will start from 1 inch below the bust line and stop at 2 inches above the hip line. The shoulder slant is 1 inch. You find the midpoint on the armhole. On that midpoint, mark 1 inch upwards like this. Then you connect the dart line with a curve like this. Extend the dart line by 1.5 inches. On the bust line, you mark the bust circumference divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance. Mark the same measurement on the armhole line. On the under bust, you mark the under bust circumference divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance and your 1 inch dart. Do the same on the waistline. Connect the lines and curve the armhole. On the hip line, you mark the hip circumference divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance and 1.5 inches. That will give it the shape it has on the picture. The hip is not fitted. You mark the same measurements on the hemline. After that, you connect the lines and cut the darts too. Add half inch to the shoulder for joining. Moving on to the back, first you measure the zip allowance, which is 1 inch. The neck width is 3 inches and the depth 1 inch. The shoulder slant is 1 inch. This is the armhole line, the waistline, and the hip line. The dart started on the armhole line and ended 2 inches above the hip line. On the armhole line, you find the midpoint. On that midpoint, you go up by 1 inch and you connect the dart line just like we did on the front. Then you extend the dart line by 1.5 inches. On the chest line, you mark the bust circumference divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance. You can place the front on top of the back like this and trace the measurement. Make sure the two waist lines align with. Also, I removed half inch from the waist and extended it to the armhole line and above the hip line to prevent zipper bulge. I did that off camera. Curve the armhole. I decided to turn the back neckline into a V. I used 5.5 inches for the neck depth and I drew a straight line from the 5.5 inches to the 3 inches width. Cut the lining exactly the way you cut the fabric. It should be at least 2 inches shorter than the fabric. Sew the lining and the material together. Measure around the neckline. The measurement should start after the zip allowance. Divide whatever you get by 2. This is how you cut the collar. Fold the material into a rectangle. The width is 5 inches, sewing allowance included. Then fold it again like this. Mark the neckline measurement divided by 2. Add half inch sewing allowance. Mark it here. Then on this end, you extend it by 3, 4, 5 inches depending on how pointed you want the collar to be. I made use of 7 inches for mine, which made it to be very pointed. If you don't want it to be that way, you use 3 or 4 inches. Attach the collar to the neckline. I cut a basic sleeve and attached it to the armhole. This is how pointed my collar is. I made use of 7 inches, sewing allowance included. Sew the sides, fold the hemline, attach the zip. This is the waistline. This is the hip line. From the waistline, measure 6 inches. That's where we will place the fake pocket. The material is unfold. The length is 6 inches and the width is 4 inches, sewing allowance included. Sew the three sides and leave half inch for turning it. Turn it and iron. You will have something like this. Place the sewn part on the 6 inches like this and so then you flip it. Do the same on the other side. I enjoyed sewing this dress. It's simple and elegant. Subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and I hope to see you in my next one. Have a good one. Bye.